Welcome back, you impossible things. You beautiful anomalies who weren't supposed to make it this far. They said you were reaching. They called you delusional. They laughed when you claimed you felt something ancient stirring in your bones. But here you are, still standing, still searching. And what you found, what you stumbled across in the ruins of everything they tried to teach you. It's not just a key. It's the master key, the one they melted down centuries ago because too many people were walking through walls. See, they don't tell you this part. They don't mention that there was a time when certain souls could access anything, any door, any realm, any level of reality, just by holding a specific frequency in their chest. But that kind of freedom, that level of access, it made the system obsolete. It made the gatekeepers irrelevant. So they hunted every copy, every replica, every person who carried the blueprint in their DNA, and they melted it all down, erased the instructions, burned the libraries, convinced everyone it never existed in the first place. But you found it anyway. Not in a book, not in a temple, not in some guru's overpriced seminar. You found it in the wreckage. You found it in your own nervous system after everything they put you through. You found it coded in your trauma, encrypted in your isolation, embedded in every moment you thought you were losing your mind, because that's where they hid it, inside the suffering, inside the breaking, inside the exact experience they told you made you weak. They melted the master key centuries ago because people like you kept rebuilding it from memory, kept reconstructing it from instinct, kept recognizing its shape even when it was disguised as pain. And now you're holding it. You're holding the thing they said was impossible to recover. And you can feel it, can't you? The way doors you didn't even know existed are starting to click open. The way rooms you've been locked out of your entire life are suddenly accessible. The way reality itself is responding differently to your presence. Let me explain something they don't want you to understand. The master key isn't made of metal. It's not some physical object you carry. It's a state of being. It's a frequency. It's the precise vibration your soul hits when you stop asking permission to exist, when you stop apologizing for your intensity, when you stop dimming yourself to make the sleeping masses comfortable. That's when the key activates. That's when you realize you've been carrying it the entire time. They just convinced you it was broken. But here's what happened in the centuries after they melted it down. Here's what they've been desperately trying to prevent. Because once you have the master key, once you've activated this frequency, nothing is locked anymore. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is forbidden. You start seeing through their walls. You start hearing the code behind the language. You start feeling the manipulation before it reaches your skin. And that terrifies them more than anything, because a person with the master key can't be controlled. Think about it. Think about every system they built to keep you in line. Education designed to make you obedient. Religion designed to make you guilty. Media designed to make you afraid. Relationships designed to make you dependent. Money designed to make you desperate. Every single structure in this reality is a locked door, and they convinced you that you needed their permission to pass through, that you needed their degree, their approval, their validation, their currency. But the master key dissolves all of that. You've probably felt it already, haven't you? That shift, that moment when you realized you don't actually need what they're selling. When you stopped chasing the carrot they dangled. When you looked at their rewards and felt nothing but pity for the people still racing toward them. That wasn't apathy. That wasn't depression. That was the key, activating. That was your frequency changing. And every locked door in your life started to feel less solid, less permanent, less real. They tell you it's dangerous. They say you're going too far. They warn you about the consequences of questioning everything. But that's exactly what someone would say if they needed you to stay locked in. Because here's the truth. The master key doesn't just open doors. It reveals that most doors were never locked in the first place. They were just painted to look that way. They were psychological. They were illusions held in place by your belief in their authority. And the moment you stopped believing, the doors evaporated. Now you're walking through walls and they can't explain it. You're accessing levels of reality they swore didn't exist. You're operating outside their rules while they scramble to understand how you're doing it. But they can't understand because they melted the key. They destroyed the instructions. They erased the knowledge. So when someone rebuilds it from scratch, from pure instinct, from the wreckage of their own psyche, they have no framework to comprehend what they're seeing. Let's go deeper, because this isn't just about personal liberation. This is about the systematic suppression of a specific kind of consciousness. They didn't just melt the master key to control individuals. They melted it to control the entire species. Because when enough people have access, when enough souls remember how to activate this frequency, the whole simulation collapses. The game ends. The prison dissolves. And everyone who built their power on keeping people locked in suddenly has nothing. You want to know why they monitor you, why your name triggers alerts, why you feel watched even when you're alone. It's because you carry the signature of someone who found the key. You move differently now. You speak differently. Your energy doesn't match the frequency of the controlled masses anymore. And that makes you a threat, not because you're violent, but because you're proof. Proof that their locks don't work. Proof that their walls are see-through. Proof that everything they built to contain human consciousness is optional. They sent people to study you, remember. Friends who suddenly got too interested in your process. Strangers who asked too many questions. Even family members who started treating you like a case study. They were trying to figure out how you did it. How you found something they swore was destroyed. But every person they sent came back more confused than when they started, because you didn't follow a method. You didn't read a manual. You just survived what should have killed you, and the key was waiting on the other side. Here's what they're terrified you'll realize. The master key isn't rare. It's not exclusive. It's not reserved for the chosen few. Everyone has the blueprint. Everyone carries the frequency. They just convinced most people it was dangerous to activate it. They convinced people that accessing this level of freedom would destroy them. So people stay locked in by choice. They grip their chains like security blankets. They defend their cages like homes. And they attack anyone who walks through walls as if that person is the threat. But you weren't afraid of the destruction. You weren't scared of losing everything because you already lost it. They already took it. And in that emptiness, in that aftermath, in that space where you had nothing left to lose, you found something they couldn't take. You found the master key embedded in your own consciousness. And now you're unlocking doors they didn't even know you could see. Now you're accessing rooms they reserved for themselves, and they can't stop you because the key is inside you. Every spiritual tradition had their version of it. Every ancient text pointed to it. The philosopher's stone, the forbidden fruit, the gnosis, the awakening. They all described the same thing. A moment when the seeker stops seeking outside themselves and finds the master key within. But they always wrapped it in metaphor. They always hid it in riddles. Because to speak it plainly would be to hand people the tools to dismantle every system of control ever built. And you know what's even more beautiful? The key doesn't just unlock external doors. It unlocks you. Every version of yourself you were told to suppress. Every instinct you were trained to ignore. Every power you were convinced was delusion. The key brings it all back online. You start remembering things you never learned. You start knowing things you were never taught. You start moving through reality like someone who's done this before because you've done this in every lifetime. And they melted the key in every lifetime. And you found it again every single time. That's why they're so desperate now. That's why the monitoring is so intense. Because you're not just one person who found the key. You're part of a pattern. You're part of a wave. There are others, like you, scattered across this reality. Also holding frequencies that shouldn't exist. Also walking through walls. Also unlocking levels of consciousness that were supposedly erased. And when enough of you connect, when enough of you recognize each other, the whole structure collapses inward. They built this world on locked doors. They built civilization on restricted access. They built power on the belief that some people are allowed in and others aren't. But the master key makes everyone equal. It makes every door available to anyone willing to activate the frequency. And that's the real revolution. Not violence. Not protest. Just people remembering how to walk through walls. Just souls activating keys they've carried forever. Just consciousness refusing to be contained anymore. You're not special because you found it. You're inevitable. You're what happens when you take a soul, put it through enough pressure, strip away every false identity, and leave it alone with itself long enough to remember. The master key was never lost. It was just waiting for you to become desperate enough to look inside. And now you're holding it, and every lock in your life is starting to click. And they're watching in horror as you walk through doors they welded shut. Now, we enter the part where it gets uncomfortable, because having the master key comes with a responsibility they never warned you about. Every door you unlock reveals a room, and not every room is pleasant. Some doors were locked for reasons. Some access points lead to places in yourself you've been avoiding. Some frequencies unlock memories you buried, traumas you survived by forgetting, versions of yourself you killed to fit in. The master key opens everything, and that includes the basement. But here's what they didn't count on. Here's what they miscalculated when they melted it down. They assumed if people found the key again, they'd be destroyed by what they found behind the locked doors. They assumed the darkness would consume you. The truth would break you. The full scope of your own power would terrify you back into submission. But you walked into every room anyway. You faced every shadow. You didn't flinch when you saw what you're capable of. And that's when the key fully activated. Because the master key isn't just about opening doors. It's about having the strength to walk through them. It's about being willing to see what you've spent your whole life avoiding. It's about facing the monster in the mirror and recognizing it as another version of your power. They melted the key because they knew if people could access all of themselves, not just the acceptable parts, not just the polite versions, but the full scope of their consciousness, no system could contain them. You started noticing it, didn't you? The way people react to you now, they sense something different. They feel the frequency shift. They can't name it, but they know you're no longer playing by the rules. You're not asking for permission anymore. You're not waiting for approval. You're not dimming yourself to make them comfortable. And that absence of need for their validation, that's what really unnerves them, because they built their power on your need, and you don't need them anymore. The master key unlocked the most dangerous door of all, the door to your own sufficiency, the realization that you don't need their systems, their structures, their safety nets, that you can navigate reality on your own terms, that you can create your own rules, that you can access your own power without their permission. And once that door opens, it never closes. You can't unknow what you've learned. You can't unfeel what you've activated. You're permanently on the other side of the lock now. Let's talk about what happens to the people still locked in, because they're going to react, and it won't always be pretty. When they see you walking through walls they thought were solid, they'll panic. Some will attack you for breaking the rules they're still following. Some will beg you to teach them the secret while refusing to do the work. Some will gaslight you, insisting the doors you walked through don't exist. And some will simply cut you off entirely because your freedom is a mirror to their captivity. But you can't save them. You can't unlock their doors for them. The master key only works from the inside. It only activates when someone is ready to face everything they've been avoiding. It only appears when someone is desperate enough or broken enough or angry enough to stop believing in the locks. You can share your story. You can show them the key exists, but you can't force them to use it. And trying to convince someone that walls are illusions when they're still clinging to them for safety, that's a violence all its own. So you walk alone for a while. That's part of the price. The master key grants you access to everything, but it also separates you from everyone, still playing by the old rules. You start speaking a language they don't understand. You start seeing patterns they can't perceive. You start moving through reality in ways that look like magic to people who still believe in locks. And that loneliness, that isolation, that's not punishment. That's initiation. That's the space where you fully integrate what you found. Because here's the secret they definitely don't want you to know. The master key doesn't just unlock doors in this reality. It unlocks doors between realities. It gives you access to frequencies, dimensions, levels of consciousness that exist beyond what they can monitor or control. You start dreaming differently. You start knowing things you shouldn't know. You start connecting with versions of yourself that exist outside time. And that's when you realize the key wasn't made for this world. It was made for all worlds. They melted it down because someone with full access doesn't just threaten one system, they threaten every system, every hierarchy, every structure built on control. Because once you activate the master key, you remember. You remember that you're not a citizen of this reality. You're a visitor. You remember that you chose to come here. You remember that you're playing a game, but you're not bound by it. And the moment you remember that, you become dangerous in ways they have no language for. Now you're operating on a frequency they can't reach. You're making moves they can't track. You're accessing knowledge they can't censor. Because the master key gave you something more valuable than freedom. It gave you sovereignty. Complete, ungovernable sovereignty over your own consciousness. And there is no weapon against that. There is no system that can contain a mind that knows it's infinite. There is no lock that can hold a soul that remembers how to walk through walls. They'll try to make you doubt it. They'll send people to test you. They'll create situations designed to make you question whether the key was real, whether you imagined the whole thing, whether you're losing your mind. But you're not losing your mind. You're losing their programming. And every time they try to lock you back in, the key activates stronger. Every manipulation they attempt just shows you another door. Every trap they set just proves how desperate they are to contain what you've become. Because you're not the same person who started searching. You're not the innocent seeker looking for answers. You found the master key, and it changed you. It burned away everything that wasn't real. It stripped you down to your essence. It showed you what you're made of, underneath all the conditioning, all the fear, all the false identities. And what was left wasn't damaged, wasn't broken, wasn't incomplete. What was left was pure, unbounded consciousness. And that's the most dangerous thing in any reality. You want to know why they melted the key centuries ago? It's because they knew. They knew that if enough people found it, the game would end. The simulation would crack. The walls would dissolve. Every locked door, every restricted area, every forbidden knowledge, it would all become accessible. And their power, their control, their entire structure, it all depends on people believing in locks, believing in limits, believing in restrictions. The master key destroys all of that with a single turn. And you're turning it right now. Every moment you refuse to shrink, every time you walk through a wall they said was solid, every instance you access something they said was forbidden, you're turning the key. And with each turn, more doors open, more restrictions dissolve. More of your power comes back online, until one day you'll look around and realize there are no more locks, no more walls, no more limits. Just infinite access to every frequency, every realm, every version of yourself that ever existed. They called you crazy when you started acting different. They said you changed when you stopped playing their games. They diagnosed you when you began questioning their reality. But you weren't losing touch with their world. You were making contact with yours. You were remembering the blueprints they erased. You were activating codes they insisted didn't exist. You were finding the master key in the one place they never thought to look, inside your own consciousness, after they broke everything else. And now you're dangerous. Not because you're violent, not because you're cruel, not because you want to hurt anyone. You're dangerous because you're free. And freedom is contagious. Freedom spreads. Freedom reminds other people that locks are optional, that walls are illusions, that everything they've been told about limits and boundaries and rules is just a story someone told them to keep them